The world didn't end with a bang like everyone always thought it would. No nuclear explosions, no asteroid slamming into the planet, no alien invasion with flashy spaceships. Nope, it ended with a whisper, with silence creeping across cities that used to buzz with life 24/7. Marcus Webb stood on the rooftop of what used to be Henderson's hardware store in downtown Atlanta, watching the sun dip below a skyline that no longer glowed with a million lights. The silence was the worst part, he decided weeks ago. No car horns, no police sirens, no drunk college kids yelling on the streets below. Just wind, the occasional groan of metal settling, and them. Always them, shuffling through the streets below like broken toys that forgot how to stop moving. Marcus was a big dude, the kind of guy who'd played defensive tackle in high school before blowing out his knee junior year. That was 15 years ago, and he'd spent the time since working construction, building up calluses and a beer gut in equal measure. The gut was gone now. Funny how the apocalypse was better than any diet plan he'd ever tried. His dark skin was ashy from lack of proper hygiene, his beard growing wild and unkempt. He gripped his trusty crowbar, the metal one from the Georgia heat, even as evening approached. Below, he counted maybe 30 of those things wandering aimlessly. Zombies, walkers, the infected, the dead, whatever anyone wanted to call them. Marcus just called them a pain in his behind. "You gonna stand up there all night philosophizing, or you gonna help us with this barricade?" The voice came from the roof access door behind him. It was Jessica Martinez, all 5'3" of her, hands on her hips in that way that reminded Marcus of his mom when he'd screwed up as a kid. Jessica had been a paralegal before the world went sideways, the kind of person who had her whole life color-coded in a planner. Now she planned supply runs and watch rotations with the same intensity. Her black hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days, and her clothes, like everyone's, were whatever fit and didn't smell too bad. Yeah, I'm coming," Marcus said, taking one last look at the horizon. Sometimes he swore he could see smoke in the distance, which meant either other survivors or fires burning themselves out. He never knew which to hope for anymore. Other people could be salvation or a whole new nightmare. He'd learned that the hard way. Inside the hardware store, their little group had managed to create something almost resembling safety. The main floor was locked down tight, every window barricaded with shelving units, plywood, and enough nails to build a house. The store had been a gold mine when they'd found it 3 weeks back. Tools, supplies, even a few camping stoves and propane tanks. The small group had been surviving in various hiding spots around the city, but this was the first place that felt like they might actually make it more than a few days. There were 8 of them total. Marcus and Jessica were the unofficial leaders, though nobody had actually voted or anything. It just kind of happened that way. Then there was Tommy Rodriguez, a skinny kid who just turned 19 right before everything went bad. Tommy had been studying computer science at Georgia Tech, and while that wasn't super useful when the internet didn't exist anymore, the kid was smart and quick on his feet. He could climb like a monkey too, which had saved their butts more than once. Rachel Thompson was their medic, though calling her that was generous. She'd been a veterinary assistant, which meant she knew how to stitch wounds and had some idea about medications, but she'd be the first to tell anyone she wasn't a real doctor. Still, she was what they had. Rachel was in her mid-30s, blonde hair starting to show gray at the roots, with tired blue eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. The Morrison twins, Derek and Dylan, were former military, both Army, both served in Afghanistan before coming back to the States. They were the muscle and the tactical brains of the operation. Identical twins, both built like brick houses, with matching buzz cuts and serious faces. The only way to tell them apart was a scar on Derek's chin from some bar fight years ago. They didn't talk much about their time in service, but they knew how to handle themselves when things got hairy. Then there was Patricia Patty O'Brien, a grandmother of 62 who was tougher than half the group combined. Patty had been a high school principal for 30 years, which meant she didn't take nonsense from anyone and could organize chaos like nobody's business. She had iron gray hair she kept short and practical, and she always seemed to have some piece of hard candy in her pocket from the stash they'd found in the store's checkout lane. Last was Kevin Chin. Wait, no. Last was Kevin Morrison, no relation to the twins despite the same last name, which had caused some confusion at first. Kevin was the quiet one, an engineer in his late 20s who'd worked for some big company doing something with infrastructure that Marcus didn't fully understand. Kevin was Asian American, wore glasses he constantly had to adjust, and had a nervous habit of clicking his pen that drove everyone crazy until Jessica had hidden all his pens. Now he just tapped his fingers instead. Actually, scratch that. Kevin's last name should be different to avoid any issues. Kevin Park. Yeah, that worked. Kevin Park, the engineer who overthought everything but had rigged up their rainwater collection system and figured out how to vent the propane stoves safely indoors. The group was gathered on the second floor, which they'd converted into their main living space. The first floor was storage and their workshop area. The second floor had originally been office space for the store, but now it was lined with sleeping bags, backpacks, and the various personal items people had managed to grab when their old lives ended. It wasn't much, but it was home. All right, listen up, people, Jessica said, clapping her hands together. She stood in the middle of the room while everyone gathered around. We need to talk about our supply situation. We've been living off what we found here for 3 weeks, but the canned goods are running low. We've got maybe another week of food if we ration carefully, 2 if we want to be hungry all the time. Water's fine though, Kevin interjected, adjusting his glasses. The collection system is working great, and I've got the purification tablets from the camping section. We can hold out for months on water as long as it keeps raining. That's great, Kevin, but we can't drink water for dinner, Tommy said. The kid was sprawled on a sleeping bag, tossing a baseball up and catching it repeatedly. Nervous energy, Marcus figured. Tommy was always moving, always fidgeting. There's a grocery store 4 blocks east, Derek Morrison said. He was studying a street map they'd marked up with notes about zombie concentrations and potential resources. Hit it on the way into the city. Big place, probably already looted, but might be something left. 4 blocks might as well be 4 miles with the number of those things out there, Rachel said quietly. She was sitting cross-legged, organizing their medical supplies for probably the 10th time. It was her way of coping, Marcus had noticed. Keep busy, stay focused, don't think about the world outside. She's right, Dylan added. We counted at least 200 hostels in a 6-block radius. 4 of us could make it there and back, but it'd be risky. Real risky. Patty stood up from where she'd been sitting on a folding chair, her knees popping audibly. Risk is part of the deal now, kids. We don't eat, we die. We die, we become those things out there. I didn't survive 62 years including 2 divorces and raising 3 teenagers to become one of those moaning idiots shuffling around downtown. That got a few chuckles, which was probably what Patty intended. She was good at that, breaking tension when it got too thick. Marcus stepped forward. All right, here's what we're gonna do. Tomorrow morning, early, we do a supply run. Me, Derek, Dylan, and Tommy. 4 people, quick and quiet. We take the rooftop route as far as we can, drop down near the grocery store, grab what we can carry, and get back before those things even know we were there. Why Tommy? Jessica asked, her eyebrows raised. No offense, kid, but you're not exactly combat ready. Tommy stopped tossing the baseball and sat up. Because I'm fast, and I can fit through spaces those guys can't. He gestured at the Morrison twins. Plus, I've done 3 runs already. I know what I'm doing. He's got a point, Derek said with a slight nod. Kids quick. Saved my butt last week when that group of walkers cornered us in that alley. Jessica looked at Marcus, her expression skeptical but not arguing. They'd developed this rhythm where she'd raise concerns and he'd make the final call, or vice versa. Leadership by tag team. Fine, she said. But you take radios, and you check in every 15 minutes. Anything goes wrong, you abort and get back here. We can last another 2 weeks on short rations if we have to. We won't have to, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. That was his job, he figured. Be confident even when everything was terrifying. We'll be back before lunch with enough food to last us a month. The rest of the evening passed in the usual routine. They ate a small dinner of canned soup and stale crackers. Patty led them in a few hands of poker using matches as chips, which Dylan won like he always did. Marcus took the first watch shift, sitting by the window with a pair of binoculars, watching the street below. The zombies were more active at night for some reason. Not faster, not smarter, just more of them seemed to wander around. Scientists probably would have had a field day studying them if, most scientists weren't dead or undead now. Around midnight, Kevin came up to relieve him. Can't sleep? Marcus asked as the engineer settled into the watch chair. Never can before someone goes on a run, Kevin admitted. I keep thinking about probability matrices and risk assessment, and it just spirals. Man, your brain must be exhausting to live with, Marcus said, but he smiled to show he was joking. We'll be fine. We've done this before. Statistical analysis suggests that each run increases the cumulative risk of. Kevin, buddy, I love you, but shut up with the statistics, Marcus interrupted gently. Sometimes you just gotta have faith, Kevin was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Faith. Right. I'll work on that. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder and headed to his sleeping bag. Around him, the others were already asleep or pretending to be. In the apocalypse, you learned to sleep when you could because you never knew when the next chance would come. He lay there in the darkness, listening to the soft breathing of his group, the distant groans from the street below, and the wind whistling through the broken city. Tomorrow would be dangerous, but then again, every day was dangerous now. That was just life on the silent earth. He must have dozed off eventually because the next thing he knew, Jessica was shaking his shoulder. Rise and shine, big guy. Sun's almost up. Marcus groaned and sat up, his back protesting. Sleeping on floors never got more comfortable, no matter how many weeks you did it. Around him, the others were already moving, packing gear, checking weapons. The Morrison twins were doing some kind of synchronized equipment check that was honestly impressive. Tommy was stretching like he was about to run a marathon, which maybe he was in a way. Rachel handed Marcus a protein bar and a bottle of water. Breakfast of champions, she said dryly. Try not to get bitten out there. We're low on bandages, and I really don't want to practice my amputation skills. You're all heart, Rachel, Marcus said, but he took the protein bar gratefully. It tasted like cardboard and chemicals, but it was calories, and calories meant energy, and energy meant survival. Jessica gathered the four of them near the roof access. She'd laid out the map on an overturned crate. Okay, one more time. Route is rooftop northeast for 3 blocks. Buildings are close enough to jump across if you get a running start. Third building is that old office complex, which should get you within half a block of the grocery store. You'll have to go down to street level there. We rappel down the south side, Derek said, tracing the route with his finger. There's an alley, usually only has a few walkers. We clear them quiet-like, move to the grocery store's loading dock entrance. That should be easier to breach than the front. Grab canned goods, dry goods, anything with protein, Jessica continued. Don't waste space on junk. You each have a hiking backpack. Fill them smart, not full. You need to be able to move fast on the way back. 15-minute radio checks, Dylan added, holding up one of their walkie-talkies. They'd found a whole box of them in the hardware store, which had been a lucky break. Battery operated, decent range. Channels stay clear except for check-ins and emergencies. Marcus looked at his team. Derek and Dylan, stone-faced and professional. Tommy, nervous energy practically vibrating off him but determination in his eyes. "We got this," Marcus said. "In and out, nice and easy. Anyone feels like the situation's going sideways, you say something. No heroes, no stupid risks. We're no good to each other dead." They all nodded. Patty came over and handed each of them an extra bottle of water. "You boys be careful out there. I'm too old to break in new people." The first part went smoother than Marcus expected. The rooftops were solid, and the jumps between buildings weren't as scary the fourth time as they'd been the first time he'd done this. Tommy practically flew across the gaps, landing in a roll and popping back up like some parkour expert. The twins moved with military precision, always covering each other, weapons ready. Marcus brought up the rear, his crowbar in hand, watching their backs. The city looked different from up high. You could see how nature was already starting to reclaim things. Weeds growing through sidewalk cracks, vines crawling up buildings, a dog, still alive somehow, trotting down the middle of a street that used to have gridlock traffic. It would have been almost peaceful if not for the groups of zombies scattered everywhere like a grotesque parade that forgot its route. They reached the office complex and found the stairwell door rusted shut. Dylan produced a small can of WD-40 from his pack like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat, sprayed the hinges, and they managed to ease it open with minimal noise. Inside, the building was dark and smelled of mold and decay. Not zombie decay, just regular building left alone for months decay, which was somehow better. "Radio check," Derek whispered into his walkie-talkie. Jessica's voice crackled back. "Read you loud and clear." "Status? Office building, heading down. All clear so far." "Copy that. Stay sharp." They moved down the stairwell, floor by floor, the emergency lighting long dead. Tommy had a small flashlight with a red filter that provided just enough light to see without advertising their presence to everything in a mile radius. Marcus's heart was pounding so loud he was sure the others could hear it. Every shadow looked like a zombie. Every sound was a potential threat. On the fourth-floor landing, they found one. A zombie in what used to be a security guard uniform, name tag still pinned to its chest reading, "Hello, I'm Walter." Walter the zombie was stuck in a corner, caught on a piece of rebar protruding from a collapsed section of wall. It groaned when it saw them, reaching out with arms that moved in jerky, unnatural motions. The smell hit them immediately. That sweet, rotten smell that meant death and danger. Derek moved forward without hesitation, pulling a long knife from his belt. He grabbed Walter by the forehead, tilted the head back, and drove the knife up through the soft palate into the brain. The zombie twitched once and went still. Derek wiped his knife on the corpse's uniform and sheathed it, all business. Clear. Keep moving. They made it to the ground floor without finding any more zombies inside the building, which was a small miracle. The loading dock alley was visible through a grimy window. Derek held up a fist, and everyone stopped. He peered out carefully, counting. 5 hostiles. Scattered. We can take them quiet if we're smart about it. Tommy and I will circle left, Dylan said. You two go right. On my signal. They exited the building in pairs, moving low and fast. The zombies were spread out, which was good. Meant they could take them one at a time without alerting the others. Marcus moved toward the nearest one, an older woman in a tattered dress. He'd learned early on not to think about who they used to be. That way led to hesitation, and hesitation led to getting bit. He raised his crowbar and brought it down hard on the back of the zombie's skull. The crack was sickening, but the thing dropped without a sound beyond the thud of its body hitting pavement. To his left, Derek was already finishing off another one. Across the alley, Dylan had one in a chokehold while Tommy drove a screwdriver through its eye socket. Brutal, efficient, silent. The 5th zombie was the problem. It was facing their direction, and when Derek moved toward it, the thing let out a groan that echoed off the alley walls. Then it did that thing they sometimes did, that horrible shrieking moan that seemed to call others. "Move, move, move," Marcus hissed. They sprinted for the loading dock as answering groans rose from the street beyond the alley. Tommy reached the dock door first, pulling on the handle. Locked. "It's locked." Dylan was there in a second, examining the mechanism. "Derek, crowbar." Marcus tossed his crowbar to Derek, who jammed it into the door frame and levered. The wood splintered with a crack that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet morning. The door swung open, and they piled inside, Derek and Marcus hauling the door shut behind them just as the first zombie shambled into view at the alley entrance. Inside the grocery store's back area was dark and reeked of spoiled food. "Everyone okay?" Marcus asked, trying to catch his breath. "Yeah," Tommy said. "That was closer than I like." "Radio checks due," Derek said, pulling out his walkie-talkie. "Base, this is supply team. We're inside the target location." Entry was loud. May have attracted attention. Static, then Jessica's voice, tight with worry. "Copy that." "How bad?" "Maybe a dozen hostiles converging on our entry point. We're secure for now, but exit route might be compromised." "Understood. Complete your objective and find an alternate exit. You've got eyes from above watching the street. I'll update you on movements." "Copy." Derek clipped the radio back to his belt. "All right, let's make this fast. Marcus and Tommy, you hit the canned goods aisles. Dylan and I will clear the store, make sure we're alone in here." The main store area was a mess. Shelves were knocked over, products scattered everywhere, signs of looting and panic from the early days. But there was still food. Lots of it, actually. People had grabbed the obvious stuff, bread and milk and fresh food that had long since rotted away, but the canned vegetables, the beans, the tuna, that was still here in decent quantities. Marcus and Tommy worked quickly, filling their backpacks with anything useful. Marcus grabbed vegetables, soups, chili, anything with a pull-top lid since can openers could break. Tommy was shoving protein bars and jerky into his pack, the stuff from the camping section that had probably been overpriced before the world ended and was now worth more than gold. "Hey, Marcus," Tommy called from the next aisle over. "They've got those camping meals, the freeze-dried ones. Should I grab them?" "Yeah, good thinking. Light and nutritious." Marcus moved to the next section, finding rows of canned fruit. He was loading peaches into his pack when he heard it. A shuffle scrape sound from deeper in the store. He froze, hand moving to the hunting knife on his belt. Derek had his crowbar. "Derek," Marcus said quietly into his radio. "We've got movement, aisle 7. "Copy. On our way. Don't engage alone." But then Tommy yelled, and Marcus was running before he thought about it. He rounded the corner to find Tommy backing away from 3 zombies that had apparently been trapped in the stockroom. They must have heard the noise when the team entered and found their way out. One was a store employee, the vest still visible under the blood and gore. The other 2 were shoppers, frozen in their last moments of humanity. Tommy tripped over a fallen display and went down hard. The zombies lunged forward with that sudden burst of speed they sometimes managed, and Marcus was there, swinging his knife in a wide arc that caught the first zombie across the throat. It didn't stop them, you had to destroy the brain, but it bought a second. He followed up with a stomp to the knee that brought the thing down to his level, then drove the knife through its temple. The second zombie grabbed his arm, its grip cold and impossibly strong. Marcus could see its teeth going for his exposed skin, and time seemed to slow down. Then there was a machete blade suddenly protruding from the zombie's forehead, and it dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Derek yanked his blade free and pivoted to the third zombie, which Dylan was already handling with brutal efficiency. "Clear," Dylan announced, breathing hard. "Everyone okay?" "Yeah," Tommy said, letting Marcus pull him to his feet. "Thanks, man. I owe you." "You don't owe me nothing," Marcus said, his heart still racing from the adrenaline. "We're a team. That's what we do." "Backpacks full?" Derek asked, all business already. They were. 4 packs loaded with enough food to keep the group going for weeks if they were careful. Mission accomplished, except for the part where they still had to get home alive. Jessica's voice crackled over the radio. "Supply team, be advised. You've got approximately 40 hostiles gathered around the loading dock entrance. Front entrance has maybe a dozen. There's a side emergency exit on the north wall, looks clearer. Maybe 5 or 6. Derek pulled out the map, orienting himself. North exit would put us 3 blocks from home, but different route. Lot of unknown variables. Versus going through 40 zombies at the loading dock, Dylan pointed out. I'll take unknown variables. They found the emergency exit right where Jessica said it would be. Marcus put his ear to the door, listening. Groaning, definitely, but not the overwhelming chorus that meant a horde. "Okay," he said. "We go out fast, take out whatever's immediately in front of us, and head north. Stay together, stay quiet as we can, and keep moving. Nobody stops for anything unless someone falls. Got it?" 3 nods. Marcus gripped the door handle, counted to 3 in his head, and shoved it open. Sunlight blinded him for a second after the darkness of the store, and then he was moving. There were 6 zombies, just like Jessica said. The closest one was an older man in jogging clothes, and Marcus shouldered past it, letting momentum carry them both forward. The zombie stumbled and fell, and Marcus kept running. Behind him, he heard the sounds of the others fighting, but he trusted them to handle it. His job was to lead, to find the path. The street opened up ahead, and he risked a glance back. Tommy was right behind him, then the twins, both looking back and swinging weapons at pursuing zombies. There were more coming now, drawn by the noise and movement. A lot more. This way. Marcus spotted an alley between 2 buildings, narrow enough that the zombies would have to funnel through single file. They ducked into it, boots pounding on pavement. The alley opened into a small courtyard behind some restaurant. Tables and chairs were still set up like people might come for brunch any minute. They vaulted over the furniture and kept going. The radio crackled. Jessica's voice was hard to hear over Marcus's own ragged breathing. "You've got a clear shot heading north on Peachtree. Building on your right has a fire escape. You can get to the rooftops from there." Marcus spotted it, a rusty fire escape ladder hanging just above head height. "Tommy, you first." The kid jumped, caught the ladder, and it screeched down with a metallic groan that set Marcus's teeth on edge. Tommy scrambled up like a spider, and Derek went next. Dylan provided cover while Marcus went third, his heavy frame making the ladder sway dangerously. Dylan came last, and not a moment too soon. Zombies poured into the courtyard below, at least 20 of them, their arms reaching up with mindless hunger. The fire escape led to the roof, and from there they could see their path home. 3 buildings over, the hardware store stood like a fortress. They'd made it. They were going to make it. The jumps between buildings were harder with the full packs, but adrenaline was a hell of a drug. Marcus's legs burned, his lungs screamed for air, but he kept moving. Behind them, the zombies had lost sight of their prey and were starting to disperse, their short attention spans moving to other stimuli. By the time they reached the hardware store roof, Marcus felt like he might pass out. Jessica was there, helping pull them over the ledge. "You guys okay? Anyone bit?" "We're good," Derek said, hands on his knees, breathing hard. "Close calls, but we're good." Inside, the others gathered around as they unpacked the haul. Canned goods, dried foods, protein bars, jerky. Even some luxury items like coffee and chocolate that Tommy had grabbed. There were actual cheers, and Patty hugged each of them despite them being sweaty and gross. "You did good, boys," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Real good." That night, they had a feast by apocalypse standards. Canned chili heated on the camp stove, crackers that were only a little stale, and peaches for dessert. They even broke out some of the coffee, a luxury they'd been saving. As Marcus sat there, surrounded by his group, his family really, he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Kevin was sketching plans for a rooftop garden, talking about how they could grow vegetables if they could find seeds. Rachel was showing Patty how to properly clean and dress wounds using a medical manual they'd found. The twins were playing cards with Tommy, and Jessica sat next to Marcus, shoulder to shoulder. "We're gonna make it," she said quietly. "Aren't we?" Marcus thought about lying, about giving her false confidence. But Jessica deserved better than that. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But we've got a shot. Better than we had yesterday. And tomorrow, we'll have a better shot than today. That's all we can ask for." She nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their group interact, watching life persist despite everything trying to snuff it out. The world outside was full of death and danger. The cities were silent except for the moans of the undead. Civilization had collapsed, and every day was a struggle just to see the next sunrise. But here, in this hardware store in the heart of dead Atlanta, 8 people were living. Not just surviving, but actually living. Telling jokes, making plans, hoping for tomorrow. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. Somewhere out there were probably other groups like theirs, other survivors fighting to stay human in a world gone mad. Maybe someday they'd find each other, band together, start to rebuild. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe this small group was all that was left in this corner of the world. Either way, Marcus decided, they'd face it together. They'd survived the initial outbreak, the chaos, the learning curve of how to fight zombies and stay alive. They'd found each other when they could have stayed alone. They'd built something here, fragile and small, but real. The sun finally set completely, and the city was swallowed by darkness. Marcus could see lights in the distance, small fires maybe, or flashlights from other survivors. The world wasn't completely dark yet. Not as long as people kept fighting, kept hoping, kept lighting fires against the night. Behind him, Patty was telling some story about her teaching days that had everyone laughing. Tommy was doing a terrible impression of a zombie that somehow made it less scary and more ridiculous. Rachel was smiling for the first time in days. The twins had actually cracked jokes, which was rarer than finding unspoiled food. This was what they were fighting for, Marcus realized. Not just to survive, but to keep these moments alive. The laughter, the friendships, the human connections that made life worth living even when the world was ending around them. "Hey, Marcus," Jessica called. "Stop brooding and get over here. We're gonna play charades," and Patty claims she can act out any movie ever made. "I'm not brooding," Marcus protested, but he was smiling as he turned away from the window. "I'm keeping watch. Kevin's on watch duty. You're on fun duty. Now get over here before I make you go first." He joined the group, settling down on his sleeping bag, surrounded by the people who'd become his reason to keep fighting. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new struggles. The zombies weren't going anywhere, and survival was never guaranteed. But tonight, they had food in their bellies, a roof over their heads, and each other. That was enough. In the silent earth, where so much had been lost, that was more than enough. It was everything. Days turned into weeks at the hardware store fortress. The group fell into routines that gave structure to the chaos of their new world. Marcus and the twins worked on reinforcing their defenses, building better barricades, and creating escape routes in case they were ever overrun. Jessica managed their resources with the precision of a general planning a campaign, rationing food and water to make everything last as long as possible. Tommy proved invaluable as a scout, his speed and agility allowing him to explore nearby buildings and map out the area. He'd found a pharmacy 2 blocks west that still had medications, though getting to it required crossing through a section of street thick with zombies. That was a problem for another day, they'd decided. Rachel cataloged everything in the medical supplies, creating a database of what they had and what they desperately needed. Kevin's engineering mind never stopped working. He rigged up a pulley system that allowed them to haul supplies to the roof without using the internal stairs, saving time and energy. He also created an early warning system using tin cans and wire that would alert them if zombies tried to force their way into the ground floor. It wasn't high-tech, but it worked. Patty became their chronicler, writing down everything that happened in a journal she'd found. "Someone needs to record this," she'd said when Jessica questioned why she was wasting time writing. "If humanity survives, they'll want to know what happened, how we lived through it. And if we don't survive, well, maybe whoever comes next will find this and know we existed. That we mattered." It was hard to argue with that logic. But the peace couldn't last forever. Nothing good ever did anymore. It was week 5 when things started to change. Tommy came back from a scouting mission with news that made everyone tense. "There's people," he said, out of breath from running back. "A group, maybe 15 or 20 of them. They're moving through the city, hitting buildings, taking supplies." "Other survivors?" Rachel asked hopefully. Tommy's expression was grim. "Maybe, but they're armed heavy. Like, military-grade weapons. And they're not being quiet about it. They're drawing zombies like crazy and not caring. Shooting them in the streets." Derek and Dylan exchanged looks. "Could be military remnants," Derek suggested. "National Guard, maybe, trying to secure the area." "Or could be raiders," Dylan countered. "We heard stories about groups like that. People who decided law doesn't matter anymore, taking what they want." "We need more information before we panic," Jessica said, though Marcus could see the worry in her eyes. "Tommy, did they see you?" "No way. I was on the rooftops, 3 buildings away. But they're heading this direction, checking every building. They'll hit this block in maybe 2 days if they keep their current pace." The group gathered for an emergency meeting. Options were limited and none of them good. They could stay and hope the armed group was friendly. They could stay and prepare to defend their home if the group wasn't friendly. Or they could pack up and leave, abandoning the best shelter they'd found and heading into unknown territory. "I vote we stay," Patty said firmly. "We've worked too hard on this place to just abandon it. Maybe they are friendly. Maybe they're setting up some kind of safe zone and we can join them. And maybe they'll kill us and take everything we have," Kevin said nervously. "The probability of encountering hostile survivors increases as resources become scarcer. Basic game theory suggests." "Kevin, buddy, now's not the time for math," Tommy interrupted gently. Marcus stood up, drawing everyone's attention. "Here's what I think. We prepare for the worst, hope for the best. We spend the next 2 days fortifying this place even more. We hide most of our supplies, make it look like we don't have much. We set up defensive positions and escape routes. And when they get here, we meet them carefully. A couple of us, while the rest stay hidden and ready to react if things go bad." "You're suggesting an ambush?" Rachel asked, looking uncomfortable. "I'm suggesting we don't put all our cards on the table," Marcus corrected. "We've survived this long by being careful. We don't stop being careful now just because we're desperate for human contact." After some debate, they agreed to Marcus's plan. The next 2 days were a flurry of activity. They moved most of their food and valuable supplies to a hidden cache on the roof, covering it with tarps and debris to make it look like junk. They set up defensive positions at key points, places where they could cover the approaches to the building. The twins taught everyone basic combat tactics, how to take cover, how to shoot if it came to that, though their ammunition was limited. They even practiced their story. If asked, they'd been at the hardware store for only a week. They had limited supplies and were considering moving on. They were just regular people trying to survive, nothing special, nothing worth taking over. The armed group arrived on schedule, just as Tommy predicted. Marcus watched from the roof as they moved down the street, an organized unit that moved with military precision. They were well equipped, wearing mix-matched tactical gear, carrying rifles and shotguns. But something about them felt off. The military moved with purpose and discipline. These people moved like they were hunting. When they reached the hardware store, their leader, a tall man with a shaved head and a scar running down his face, called out. "Anyone in there? We're looking for survivors. We've got a safe zone set up, food, water, security. Come out and let's talk." Marcus and Jessica exchanged glances. They'd agreed to be the ones to make contact. "Stay sharp," Marcus whispered to the others, who were hidden in various positions. Then he and Jessica made their way down to the first floor, unlocking the barricaded door but not opening it all the way. "We're here," Marcus called through the gap. "What do you want?" The scarred man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Garrett. Like I said, we're gathering survivors, taking them to a safe zone we've established. It's not much, but it's better than hiding in buildings waiting to die." "We're doing okay here," Jessica said carefully. "But we appreciate the offer." Garrett's smile faded. "Was it really an offer, sweetheart? See, we're trying to rebuild some kind of society here. Can't do that with people scattered all over, using up resources inefficiently. You come with us, contribute to the group, everyone benefits." "And if we say no?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then we have a problem," Garrett said, and suddenly there were weapons pointed at the door. "See, we've worked too hard to have people refusing to cooperate. So here's how this is gonna go. You open that door, you and whoever else you got in there come with us peacefully, and nobody gets hurt. You refuse, we take this building by force, and people definitely get hurt. Your choice." Marcus felt rage building in his chest. They'd survived zombies, starvation, disease, and chaos, only to be threatened by other humans. It was almost funny in a sick way. "Almost. We need a minute to discuss," Jessica said. "You got 2 minutes," Garrett replied. "Then we start breaking down that door." Marcus and Jessica retreated back into the building. The others were waiting, weapons ready. "They're raiders," Marcus said without preamble. "They want us to join their group or they'll take this place by force." "How many?" Derek asked. "I counted 18, Jessica said. "All armed." "We're 8 people with limited weapons and even less ammunition," Dylan said grimly. "Those aren't good odds." "The building gives us advantage," Derek argued. "Choke points, high ground, prepared positions. And if we fight, some of us will die," Rachel said quietly. "Maybe all of us." Patty spoke up, her voice steady. "I didn't survive this long to become someone's slave or property. If we go with them, we're giving up our freedom, maybe our lives anyway, depending on what kind of people they really are. I say we fight." "I'm with Patty," Tommy said. "These are our homes, our supplies that we risked our lives for. I'm not handing it over to some thug with a gun." They looked at Marcus, waiting for his decision. The weight of leadership had never felt heavier. Whatever he chose, people might die. But if they gave up without fighting, they'd lose something maybe more important than life. They'd lose their dignity, their agency, their humanity. "We fight," Marcus said. "But smart. We use the building, use our preparations. And if it looks like we're gonna lose, we run. The escape route through the sewers, like we planned." "Agreed?" Everyone nodded. They moved to their positions, Marcus feeling his heart pound as adrenaline flooded his system. This was different from fighting zombies. Zombies were mindless, predictable. Humans were dangerous in ways the undead could never be. Garrett's voice called out again. "Time's up. What's it gonna be?" Marcus appeared at a second-floor window, one that gave him cover but allowed him to be seen. "It's gonna be you leaving. Now. This is our home, and we're keeping it." Garrett shook his head like Marcus had disappointed him. "All right then. Hard way it is. Boys, light it up." Gunfire erupted, bullets slamming into the building. But Marcus and his group had prepared well. The windows were barricaded, the walls reinforced. The raiders were wasting ammunition on hardened positions. Marcus waited, letting them empty magazines, and then nodded to Derek. The twin appeared at a different window, a hunting rifle in his hands. One shot, precisely aimed, and one of Garrett's men went down with a scream, clutching his leg. Not a kill shot, they'd agreed to wound if possible, but enough to show they weren't helpless. The raiders scattered, taking cover. Good, Marcus thought. They hadn't expected real resistance. Time to press the advantage. Listen up, Marcus shouted. We don't want to kill anyone, but we will defend ourselves. You're wasting ammo and time on us when there's easier targets. Walk away now, and we'll call it even. There was a pause, and Marcus dared to hope they'd actually leave. Then Garrett laughed, a cold, angry sound. You just made this personal. Nobody shoots my people and walks away. We're gonna drag you out of there, Ann. Whatever Garrett was going to say was cut off by screaming. Marcus risked a look and saw zombies, dozens of them, shambling down the street toward the raiders. The gunfire had attracted them, ringing the dinner bell for every undead thing in earshot. Fall back! Garrett was shouting. Fall back to the vehicles. The raiders were suddenly fighting on two fronts, zombies coming from multiple directions, drawn by noise and movement. It was chaos, and Marcus watched it unfold with a mixture of relief and horror. He didn't wish death on anyone, even raiders, but the zombies didn't care about his wishes. We need to lock down. Jessica was shouting. Those things are coming here too. She was right. The zombies weren't just going after the raiders. They were spreading out, and some were heading toward the hardware store. Marcus and his group sealed the building tight, returning to their defensive positions, but this time facing undead instead of human threats. The next hour was tense, listening to gunfire and screams from outside, the groaning of zombies, the chaos of it all. Gradually, the sounds died down. The gunfire stopped. The screams ended. Just the zombies remained, their constant moaning a backdrop to everything. When Marcus finally risked looking out again, the raiders were gone. Some had made it to their vehicles and escaped. Some hadn't. Bodies lay in the street, both human and zombie, a grim reminder of how quickly everything could go wrong. The horde was still out there, stirred up and active, more zombies than Marcus had seen in one place since the early days. We can't stay here, Derek said, joining Marcus at the window. That horde is gonna hang around, maybe try to get in. Even if they can't, we're trapped until they disperse. Could be days or weeks. The sewer escape route, Jessica said. We use it now, while we can. Take what we can carry and find a new place. The tunnels were a maze, but Kevin had mapped them using old city infrastructure plans he'd found. They moved slowly, carefully, the sounds of the city above them muffled and distant. Marcus brought up the rear, making sure everyone stayed together, that no one got left behind. They emerged 3 miles away, in a different part of the city entirely, coming up through a maintenance shaft in what used to be an industrial district. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and purples that would have been beautiful if Marcus had any energy left to appreciate beauty. Where now? Tommy asked, looking around at the unfamiliar streets. We find shelter for the night, Marcus said. Then tomorrow, we figure out our next move. They found a small office building that looked secure enough, cleared it of 2 zombies, and barricaded themselves on the 3rd floor. Everyone was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained. They ate cold food from cans, not wanting to risk the smell of cooking attracting attention. As night fell completely, the group huddled together, processing everything that had happened. They'd lost their home but kept their lives and freedom. They'd faced down human threats and zombie hordes and survived both. They were battered, tired, and scared, but they were still together. Tomorrow, we scout the area, Jessica said, slipping into planning mode because that's how she coped. Find water, secure food sources, look for a new base. We start over. Again, Patty added with a tired smile. We start over again. And we'll keep starting over as many times as we have to. Marcus looked at his group, his family. They'd been through hell together, and they'd probably go through worse before this was all over. But they were survivors, all of them. They'd proven that over and over. "We're gonna make it," he said, echoing the conversation he'd had with Jessica weeks ago. But this time, he believed it a little more. "We've come this far. We're not stopping now." Outside, the silent earth stretched in all directions, full of danger and death and endless challenges. But inside this small office building, 8 people held on to hope, held on to each other, and held on to their humanity in a world that seemed designed to strip it away. That was victory enough for one day. Tomorrow would bring new struggles, but tomorrow was tomorrow. Tonight, they were alive, they were together, and they were still fighting. In the apocalypse, that was all anyone could ask for. And in the darkness, as exhaustion finally pulled Marcus towards sleep, he thought he could almost see a future beyond just surviving day to day. A future where they found more survivors, where they built something lasting, where humanity found its footing again. It was a distant dream, maybe impossible, but it was there. The world had ended, but their story hadn't. Not yet. Not while they still had breath and hope in each other. The silent earth could throw whatever it wanted at them. They'd face it together, just like they always had. And somehow, that made all the difference.